Southern Asia, and we landed in one of the biggest cities in the world. While we were there, I looked it up, and the estimate of the metro population is 28.5 million people in the northern part of this country. And we landed, and I've been to Cairo, Egypt before, and this part of Southern Asia is actually very Muslim, and so kind of stepping out into the streets, it felt just like Cairo, which was chaotic, energetic, kind of, it smells a little bit, and there's just tons of activity going on. And so we step out of the airport, and we all gather, we meet one of the people of our host team, and we gather just outside the airport where all of these taxis are all lined up. And we were like, okay, we need to go from our airport to the hotel that we're going to spend the night at. We were going to spend the night at more of a Western-style hotel at a Marriott. And we all started to begin to, our host went to go rent out the taxis for us, which was great because we didn't speak the local language, and he did. And so he got them all in line. There was 3 of them in line at first, and eventually the 4th came. And I think we started lining people up, trying to make sure the guys were with the girls, and things were kind of nicely balanced. And the first taxi went, and then the second taxi, third taxi, and finally I think it was me and Claire, and then our host. We were the final crew. We got in the taxi, and it was a little bit of like a anxiety-inducing experience because the taxi that we were in, since we're the smallest crew, is the smallest. And so they're like, oh, there's no room for your bag. We'll throw it on the roof rack, which is fine, but they didn't strap it down. And I was like, it's going to fall off? And they're like, no, don't worry about it. And so we're driving through one of the most populated cities in the world with some of the worst traffic in the world. And I'm praying the whole time every time we stop and we accelerate and we go over a bump, that my bag doesn't fly off and get run over by the cars behind us. And thankfully, after 10 or 15 minutes, we make it to we arrive to the hotel, to the Marriott hotel we're staying at, and I get out and I look and I see my bag, and I'm so thankful because the next 9 days of the trip would have been horrible. And we get out, we go into security because this hotel is nice enough to have security. We go in, we begin to wait in the lobby, and there's some of our crew's already there because we're the last taxi to go, and we begin to wait to make sure everyone has arrived, and we get to slowly check in. They need our passports, all these things. And as we're waiting, we're like, man, the other taxi's taking a little bit. This is taking a while. And as I was thinking about it, I was kind of putting together, okay, who was on that taxi? Because I'm not responsible for people. They're adults, but I would have to call their parents if something happened. And so I was like, okay, it was Alejandra, it was Isaac, it was Lizzie, and it was Emery, right? Emery, you were on that. And okay, this is a decent crew, and we all know Isaac looks like Chris Kyle, or he looks like he's part of the Navy SEALs, and so they should be okay. They should be all right. But after a while, they were the first to leave, so they should have been the first to arrive. And so the anxiety in my heart is beginning to grow because we are in one of the largest cities on the planet. It is midnight. It is dark out. And we don't speak the language. And I'm confident these people are. These are mature people in the car. But we're just helpless foreigners. And so I begin to call Alejandra incessantly because thankfully she had a working phone. And I don't know, whatever reason, the first 3 or 4 phone calls didn't go, but I just would call until it went to voicemail, hang up, and try again. Just one of those just super annoying people, because I was frantic. I was like, we've got to find these people. We can't just let them wander around this city in the middle of the night when it's dark out with someone they don't even know, right? Because they're with the taxi driver. And eventually, I think on the 4th or 5th call, Alejandra picks up. And you could sense a little bit of the unease in the chaos that's happening in that taxi cab. Because I think at this point, you guys had pulled off the main road. They were driving through, and they can tell the story better, but they were driving through what were the slums of this very large city. There weren't many lights. There were animals just walking around, which is really common in that part of the world, but pretty shocking for us Westerners. Animals just walking around. They were people were living in shacks, right? They don't even have windows. They just have for the holes in their walls, they just have curtains up or different linens up. And then they're with this taxi car driver that they don't know. He doesn't know English. They don't know his language. And so you're like, is this guy going to mug him? What's going to go on? Is he just going to take their stuff and leave them in the slums of this large city? And thankfully, I was able to give the phone to our host, and Alejandra gave the phone to the taxi cab driver. Turns out the taxi cab driver was a good dude, just didn't know his directions very well. And we slowly directed them to the hotel, and they finally arrived. And I breathed this all right, we survived our first day in Southern Asia. We are all here, and it's now 1 o'clock in the morning. But we did it, and we survived. And even though they were wandering around through the dark, they made their way to their final destination. And what that experience serves as a metaphor is really our nature as human beings, right? We are just like foreigners in a taxi driving around a large city completely in the dark, incapable of getting to our final destination where we're supposed to be. Right? Like this is what the Bible talks about humanity. We are in darkness. We cannot see our way through. We are hopelessly lost. Just like the taxi cab was with all of my friends, right? We were hopelessly lost. We cannot escape it. We don't know where we're going. In fact, we're blind and we're stuck in the dark. And that reality and this picture that's painted all across Scripture about the nature of humanity, that became more true to me. I understand this at a deeper level as I was hanging out with people that have a different paradigm and come from a different cultural background as me, right? In the United States, not everyone is a Christian here, but roughly 70% of the United States confesses to be Christian, right? The part of Southern Asia we were going to that confesses to be Christian is 0.2%. So it means 99.8% of this region of the world that we're going to doesn't know Jesus. So talk about lostness. Talk about this separation from God. You can feel in a way that I've never felt in my life. And so as I was kind of going through this and processing through, okay, God, what does this mean? And how am I supposed to handle this depth of lostness, this depth of spiritual darkness I've never seen before? He led me to a passage in Scripture in Isaiah 9, and then also the pretext of it in Isaiah 8. And that's what we're going to go to tonight. I want to share out of Isaiah 8 and 9. And a little bit of context of this scripture. This is Isaiah. A lot of people presume that in Isaiah 7, 8, and 9. This is the prophet Isaiah, and he is God's chosen man, the man of the hour, to speak to the nation of Judah, which is God's chosen people. It was originally Israel, and they got mad at each other, and they split up. And so the nation of Israel, most of the tribes stayed in the north, and Judah and a couple other tribes stayed in the south. And then eventually the nation of Israel in the north fell, and so it's just the nation of Judah is remaining in the south. And Isaiah was sent to the nation of Judah to be God's man, to speak his word. And in 7, 8, and 9, we see the ascendancy of King Ahaz or King Ahaz, however you pronounce it. If you're from the UK, you probably say it differently. But we see the ascendancy of King Ahaz to the throne of Judah. And his father is King Jotham, who actually is a pretty well-respected king. But King Ahaz doesn't follow in the way of his father. And he begins to lead, unfortunately, for the nation of Israel, nation of Judah, wherever the king leads them, the majority of the population follows. And so we see King Ahaz choose a different path than his father, and the spiritual darkness begin to creep over the nation of Judah. And in Isaiah 8, 20 through 22, which we're going to start, we see Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, right, under the inspiration of God himself, begin to describe this reality. And what's crazy is this reality is painted not only for just the nation of Judah, but also for all of humanity. So it says this in Isaiah 8, verse 20. Look to God's instructions and teachings. Spoken like a true prophet, right? People who contradict his words are completely in the dark. They will go from one place to another, weary and hungry. Because they are hungry, they will rage and curse at their king and their God. And they will look up to heaven and down at earth. But wherever they look, there will be trouble and anguish and dark despair. They will be thrown out into the darkness. This is a pretty dark picture. And this is true of the nation of Judah and Israel. And this is true of all of humanity. For those who do not follow the instructions of the Lord, right? And which is everybody. We all fall, and the nation of Judah was this glowing example of that. We are thrown out into the outer darkness. Places of deep despair and anguish. The Bible is clear. God is clear. Humanity on its own is lost in deep darkness. Humanity on its own is lost in deep darkness. This is true for the nation of Judah, right? What they went through was pretty atrocious. I mean, you go from King Jotham, who was relatively God-fearing, to King Ahaz, who began to worship other gods. He actually set up the high places again, began to build these shrines. He actually went into the temple and distorted the orderly worship of the temple. He built a different altar and tried to worship on it, began to pervert all of those things. He actually then began to make the nation of Judah a vassal state, or a state that was subservient to the nearby empire of Assyria, which was not God's chosen path. They were meant to be a sovereign country because they had a sovereign God. And so he was doing things not according to God's will. And then he, like the kind of the crown of his rebellion against God, the crown of the darkness that began to grab a hold of the nation of Judah, is they began to worship this god called Molech. And this isn't super important, but it shows you the depths of spiritual darkness that humanity gets into. And what's unique about the god Molech that they worship is this worship practice involved sacrifices of humans, specifically of children. And they would, in their worship practices towards Molech, they would begin to burn fires underneath the idol and the shrine to Molech. And as it would glow red hot, there would be like an outstretched hand of the idol of Molech. And there they'd place, in this outstretched hand that's burning hot, they'd place an infant child. And they begin to bang these drums as this infant child is screaming and writhing in pain, burning alive. And they would worship their God this way. This is real spiritual darkness. And guys, humanity is not far removed. We think in our Western culture, things are great. We think in our modern age, things are awesome. But this is not far removed from where we live today. I mean, I know that sounds super dramatic, but it's actually the truth. And I'm not saying the Western world treated these people well, but when the Spanish came and met the Aztecs, this was happening, right? People were being sacrificed on altars to gods in the Yucatan Peninsula. And in many ways, this practice still exists, where children are perverted and children their lives are laid down on the altars of ideologies of our day. Humanity is lost in its darkness. It's true for the nation of Judah and Israel. It's true for Southern Asia. And what I got to see and witness as billions of people worship other gods. And billions of people worship other idols. And it's true for Ames, Iowa as well. It's true for Iowa State University as well. It's true for our campus. Now the darkness, right, I don't think anybody's sacrificing people to altars, right? I don't think that's happening in Ames. That's called murder, and people go to jail for that. But darkness, the spiritual darkness, still exists here today. I mean, think about our culture. Think about the state of our campus. What do people run to? What darkness do they cling to? Think about the entertainment that they run to. Think about how people run to in their spiritual darkness, grasping for something of substance, how they run to people's approval of them. Or when they're looking for some sort of cause or some sort of purpose, as they wander around blind in this world, how they run to politics and make war with one another. Think about how as people living in their spiritual darkness run to different substances and medicines, assuming it's going to be their peace and their joy. Humanity, both in ancient Israel and in Southern Asia and in Ames, Iowa, is lost in a deep darkness. And while we were there in Southern Asia, our host, who was an incredible man who I'm very thankful for, he used this analogy. I'm going to build on it tonight. So if you were there in Southern Asia with us, I'm building on this analogy a little bit. But he used this analogy as we were talking about like all the things we're seeing. And like, it's just so bizarre to see people worshiping in the way they're worshiping because I don't have a paradigm for it. And he was talking about how you can imagine humanity. You can actually imagine each and every one of us. Our place that we're born into is we are like people adrift in an ocean. Imagine it's a dark, starless, moonless night. There's overcast. There's waves in the sea. The salt water's getting in your eyes, and you're just trying to tread water. And you know, like, before long, I'm going under. Before long, I won't be able to keep my head above this water line. I'm going to drown. And so what do you do in that moment of darkness? You grab hold of anything that comes by. You'll grab a hold of that piece of driftwood. You'll grab a hold of that piece of trash that's floating in the Pacific, right? You'll grab a hold of anything. Even things that may harm you. They might grab a hold of a shark. They might grab a hold of a crocodile. It doesn't matter. Something is better than nothing. This is the condition of humanity that we find ourselves in. It's true for Israel. It's true for Southern Asia. And it's true for Ames, Iowa. Now, thankfully, in God's gracious mercy, He actually sets an end date for this kind of reality to be a permanent thing for us. In Isaiah 9:1, this is where the narrative gets good. This is where the prophecy of Isaiah begins to turn hopeful. And it says this, "Nevertheless, that time of darkness and despair will not go on forever. The land of Zebulun and Naphtali will be humbled. And there will be a time in the future when Galilee of the Gentiles, which lies along the road that runs between Judah, or between the Jordan and the sea, will be filled with glory." So Isaiah is seeing this nation going into deep darkness, right? Like crazy, horrible, evil, perverted, like distorted things are happening. Vile things are happening. And he's saying, but there will be a time that this deep darkness will end. That despair will end. And this is, and this isn't just Alex saying this, is Bible scholars saying this too. This is a foreshadowing of what is to come through Jesus. There will be a time where humanity's driftless nature, of humanity's nature of sitting in the middle of the ocean by itself in complete darkness, not being able to grab a hold of anything of value and of substance, that time of despair will come to an end. And this is incredible that God chooses to do it. Because we chose to go in that ocean by ourselves. We chose to let spiritual darkness grip us because we chose sin. We didn't choose God. Yet in his kindness and his nature, he chooses to set an end date for humanity so that we can have a chance at getting out of this darkness and despair. And that's where Isaiah 9:2-4 comes. And while we were in Southern Asia, this verse became more alive to me than it ever has in my entire life. And I'll read it out loud. Isaiah 9:2. The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. For those who live in the land of deep darkness, a light will shine. You will enlarge the nation of Israel, and its people will rejoice. They will rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, and like warriors dividing the plunder. For you will break the yoke of their slavery and lift their heavy burden from their shoulders. You will break the oppressor's rod, not just as you did when you destroyed the army of Midian. Jesus is our great light. Jesus is our great light. Now, if you grew up, and those of you who didn't grow up, I think in the Christian culture, I think when we talk about this metaphor of light and darkness, I think you actually have an advantage of understanding it a little bit better. Because I grew up in a Christian home, and so we sang the songs, right? This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. We talk about Jesus being the light all the time. Honestly, it became cliche. Like to a point where I was like, I just kind of shrugged my shoulders. Oh, all right, yeah, Jesus is the light. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I've lived in the light my whole life, so all right, great, that's awesome. And then when you go to a place where there actually really is darkness, and there's darkness here, but it's so ridiculously apparent and obvious there, it begins to shake you a little bit. And you really see that Jesus is our great light. He is the great light for humanity. He is the one that is the lifeboat that comes into the middle of the ocean with floodlights and begins to illuminate your surroundings and calls you to a place of safety. And there's consequences, actually really good things that come as a result of Jesus being our light. And the first is this: the light of Jesus reveals the uselessness of all the other things. The light of Jesus reveals the uselessness of all the other things. If we think of Jesus being that lifeboat that comes into the middle of the dark ocean that we find ourselves stuck in, where we can't even see, and he flips the floodlights on, all of a sudden, not only do we see the boat, but we also see what we're holding on to. We see the trash that we've been holding on to. We see the plank that we're holding on to, the driftwood we've been holding on to. We realize why our arm is hurting so bad because we're holding on to is a crocodile gnawing our arm off. We realize that we're being pulled under by a shark that's been biting at our leg. That what we've actually been grabbing onto not only is worthless, but it's probably harming us. The light of Jesus brings illumination to the things that we choose to hold on to. In the light of Jesus, we see what the worship. I saw someone walk out. In the light of Jesus, we see what the worship of idols and false gods does in the nation of Judah's history. In the light of Jesus, we see what the frivolous nature of worshiping false gods all across Southern Asia. And in Ames, when the lights flip on, we begin to see the uselessness and the futility of the things that we cling to. In the light of Jesus, we see where a life devoted to entertainment and streaming services ultimately leads. In the light of Jesus, we see what a life leads to when it's given over to social media and video games. In the light of Jesus, we see where a life dedicated to increasing the numbers in our bank account and pursuing success and a high GPA will ultimately bring us to. In the light of Jesus, we will see where a life surrendered to the will of other people and the approval of other people will enslave us. The light of Jesus will turn on and let us see what we're holding on to, that it's useless and it's often harmful for us. Secondly, the light is bright enough to be seen by all peoples. This is really good news. If you read on, which we talked about, it actually is alluded to in Isaiah 9:1, talking about the land of Gentiles in Galilee. But also in Isaiah 9:4 or 9:3, it says, and you will enlarge the nation of Israel. Right? This light is bright enough for all people to see. The light of Jesus actually is so all-encompassing that it expands the work of God beyond just the chosen people of Israel, but to all peoples. And it's a message of hope for the nation of Israel, because at this time right there in the nation of Judah, they're in decline. Like their numbers aren't doing well. They're losing a lot of battles. They're turning to other things. God's hand of blessings not on them. And they're saying, hey, when this light comes, the nation will be enlarged. More people will be brought into the family of God. And that promise is for you and I. That promise is for all the people that I saw in Southern Asia. That promise is for every single person that we see when we walk on our way to classes on campus, when we go to our jobs and we see the customers come in and out. That light is bright enough for all people to see. The nation of Israel will be enlarged. The light of Jesus is bright enough for all people to see it. Thirdly, the light of Jesus sets us free from our darkness. Isaiah 9:4 is like one of, and we'll talk more about this next week because it's like so profound. And for me, this is like, and I think my own testimony and what God has done in my life, this is something that has become very real in my life in a way that I have a hard time of articulating. But it says in Isaiah 9:4, you will break the yoke of their slavery, lift their heavy burden from their shoulders. You will break the oppressor's rod just as you did when you destroyed the armies of Midian. The light of Jesus brings us into freedom. It brings everyone into freedom. Anyone who looks to Jesus and chooses to say yes is brought free or brought out of their darkness into freedom. Because apart from Jesus, we're bound, we're stuck. We cannot get out of that place in the middle of the ocean, drifting by ourselves. We're incapable of it. It's not possible. Yet the light of Jesus, when He illuminates our life, begins to call us out of darkness and set us free from it. It's amazing. Colossians 1:13 through 14 articulates it like this. It says, for He has rescued us from the kingdom of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of His dear Son, who purchased our freedom for us and forgave us of our sins. I'm going to worship team up to come up. We're going to close. But there's and this is, I kind of add this in last minute, so it might be not most well articulated portion of this, but there's like a debate right now around, and there has been for a long time, around whether to use the word Easter, right? There's this like debate of like, should we use the word Easter? And I'm talking about Easter because it's Holy Week, right? Jesus' death is being remembered on Good Friday, this coming Friday. And then on Sunday, we remember His resurrection, right? We remember Him coming back to life. And so there's some debate on like, as there always is, around like, okay, what happened to this name Easter? Where did it come from? Are we celebrating a pagan holiday? And really, really righteous people, or really, really religious people get all like kind of just like their panties in a bunch and get all worried about where this came from. And I was having a discussion with some of my really close friends, my cousins, and they're all pastors of some kind. It's kind of weird. And we were talking about this, and I began to look into it myself on what Easter is. And one of the more modern understandings of what Easter actually comes from, it's one of the oldest words in the English language. It's been around for a long time. And so one of the translations of where Easter comes from is from Latin. And it comes from the word dawn. D-A-W-N, which is my mom's name. Comes from the word dawn. Which is really fitting when we look at the picture of humanity. That on that third day, on the dawn of the third day, the Son of God rose to life and invited humanity into that life. That He Himself became the light of dawn for all humanity. That we weren't trapped in our darkness anymore. That He Himself, in this defeat of sin, hell, and the grave, chose to become the great life for people who are stuck in the land of darkness. And what's amazing is we get to live in that dawn. If we said yes to Jesus, we get to live in that great life. We get to get our feet out of that water that we were stuck in for so long, drifting by ourselves, and put our feet on a steady place in that lifeboat that's lit up. And in that place, in that light we get to live in of Jesus, man, there's really life. There's freedom from our sin. There's joy. It says in John 15, joy to the overflow. There's a love that will remain in us. That's a promise. There's peace that's given to us, not as the world gives, but as He gives. This light that we get to live in is far greater than anything that the darkness can ever offer. It's an amazing thing we get to live in, the light of Jesus. And so often we take it for granted. If you grew up in a Christian home, again, I think you might have a disadvantage here because it's easy to take for granted what the light you actually get to live in. Because darkness sucks. It's painful. We hold on to things that are only going to harm us. And here's the thing that I want to leave each and every one of us with. Right? This light of Jesus that is what's calling people out of the land of darkness into this kingdom of light. The light of Jesus that's bright enough for every person to see. The light of Jesus that's actually powerful enough to vanquish the darkness and bring us into freedom. This light, yes, it exists for everybody. But so often, people don't know that it's there. Think of the lifeboat. And the floodlights are just at the back of their head. And they're staring into the darkness still. And they don't know if they just simply turned around, they would see Jesus. They don't know that if they just simply would turn around, they'd see their rescue in the middle of their darkness. They have no clue. And that's as we were walking through the 99.8% in that part of the region of the world that we were in that didn't know Jesus. They didn't know that there was a lifeboat full of lights ready to call them out of that darkness. And guys, that is the truth and the very reality that we live in here in Ames 2. So many of our friends, I would argue, that don't know Jesus actually really haven't heard the gospel. They know religiosity, they know dead institutions, they know hypocritical people, but they don't know the light of Jesus yet. They haven't seen it for themselves because no one's ever told them. There's no one that's told them, hey, Jesus can set you free from your addiction. There's no one that's told them, hey, that pain, that wound that you have, Jesus wants to heal it for you. No one's ever told them that they can just simply look around and see this great light that will call them out of darkness. It's really that simple to just tell people, hey, you may not love what I'm saying, but I'm telling you, there is a great light, and he wants to call you out of darkness. He wants to break you out of this place that you are stuck in and you are incapable of getting out of by yourself. Jesus is our lifeboat, pulling us out of that dark sea that we've been so lonely in and so helpless in. And so the question I want to leave with you tonight is, are you going to point people to the light of Jesus? Are we as individuals? This comes from a very personal place, guys. I'm not saying this because I figured this out. I was so challenged because it's really that simple. Are we going to point people to the light of Jesus, or are we not? Are we going to say, hey, this light I'm living in, this experience I've had with Jesus is so good that other people actually really need to experience this? Because I see their life, and I don't think I'm better than them, but I have empathy because I see what they're stuck in. And there's a rescuer who will come and pull them out of their darkness, who will illuminate their life. But they might not know it. They probably never heard it. And we're their chance. The reality is that many of you will go out into the world, you're probably successful people because you're hardworking, you're at a university, and if you're enrolled at an American university like Iowa State, you're one of the most privileged people on the planet, so you're probably going to be successful. You're going to go out, and you're going to be in the workforce, and we're going to live in what is an increasingly post-Christian nation, but that's besides the point. As you meet the people in your workplace, as you go about your daily life, you know what? All those people, their best chance about knowing the light of Christ and knowing the light of Jesus is singularly on your shoulders. It's on my shoulders. The best chance that they have of experiencing Jesus is you, and it's me. There's a reason why we go to those workplaces. There's a reason why we end up in the classes we do. There's a reason why we live in the apartments that we do. God is like, He prepares good deeds in advance for us. That's what He does. He places us strategically so that other people can be pointed to the light of Jesus because of our life. But the question is will we do it? It's that simple. But will we do it? I want to pray, and then we're going to close with the song of worship. Before I pray, though, I want to encourage you, if you're in here and you don't know Jesus, He is the great light. He is our salvation. Then your life, my life, before I experienced the fullness of the work of Christ in my life, was really dark. I was bound in addiction, and I couldn't get out. I was stuck in my sin, and I couldn't figure a way out of it. Yet Jesus, who is the great light, illuminated the pathway for me and brought me into this life where I could experience freedom, where I could experience peace, where I could experience, even tonight I was praying for the healing work of Jesus in my life because He's continuing to heal me from all the things that I let happen to myself. He wants to do that for you. So I'm going to pray, and then we're going to respond with a song of worship. So you guys can stand, and then we're going to respond. Jesus.
Thank you for joining Chi Alpha at Iowa State University this week, where we seek to encounter God and grow with each other. For more information about who we are, follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Chi Alpha ISU.